I'm assuming I can assuming everybody can hear me clearly, and
Yes,
let's
yes,
check
ma'am.
the
Yes,
sharing
ma'am.
of the screen as well. All right. Let's go to Zoom, shared, and here we go. Can you see the screen?
Yes, ma'am. Managing the screening process. What do you see?
Excellent. So today we are going to talk about training plan. If you remember last time, what did we talk about? We spoke about training need analysis. Why do we need to have it? What are the levels of training need analysis? We also spoke about the method that it follows. In addition to that, we also briefly spoke about why a training need analysis is not always necessary, because it is enough for us to identify where the gap is and fill the gap even without training at times. So today, I think we are going to propound and we are going to expand on the training plan concept. So like I do, I'm going to stop initially for some time to check from the last session, are there any questions that you would like me to address? Anything that you haven't understood, you went back and you wanted to revisit, or there's a confusion? Is there something I can help you with? First 5 minutes are always for it.
You said something about NPS survey. What was that?
NPS survey. Batao, what is an NPS survey? Net Promoter Score Survey.
Okay.
Anybody else knows what an NPS survey is? And I can talk in detail about it if you do not know. What is an NPS survey? Anyone? HR वाले होंगे कॉल पे, पता होगा उन्हें. NPS तो is the bread and butter. कोई नहीं, lunch कर रहे हैं सब. How many of us are here? With 20 of us are here. Okay. Nobody has heard about an NPS survey. Okay. So आज बात करते हैं NPS survey का briefly. Thank you for asking me and thank you for being vulnerable enough to say that what is an NPS survey. So how many of you have heard about an organization called Gallup, Gallup? Have you heard about Gallup?
Yeah, they do employee survey, I believe.
Yes. So Gallup as an organization it's called the Gallup 12. There are 12 questions that the Gallup organization survey consists of. Now, it's amazing how just by using a survey, an organization can make a name for itself. But of course, what goes behind it, just not a questionnaire, it also has a plethora of psychologists and behavioral scientists who play a huge part in designing those 12 questions. So it's like walking into a gemstone shop and saying, huh, char patthar pade hue hain. But those four gemstones can have so much power. It's like the hand of Thor, which has the entire power of the universe in it. So those 12 questions have been designed psychologically in a way to cater to the needs of any and every employee who would like to gauge the company's culture and also give a very pinpointed feedback about how the year has gone. So Gallup's 12 has the 12th question, which is the make or break of human resources. It is the basis of great place to work. It is also the basis of heads rolling in an organization. And what is the question? What is the likelihood of you recommending someone you know to work here? Now, do you have to use the exact words? No. Some people expand Gallup's 12 into different kinds of questions because it is like people cheat in an examination when they know the exact question. So every year, people look at that question, they mark something. Sometimes people don't even understand what it means. So in the survey, what people do is they expand the questions. And by the way, that question which says whether you would like to recommend somebody whom you know or from your family who would like to work in this organization, it's a Likert scale. I hope all of you know what is a Likert scale. Does everybody know what is a Likert scale? Yes, no, maybe?
Yes.
On the scale
Yeah.
of 1 to 5, which we use for our surveys.
Yes. Most likely and least likely.
Least
Correct?
likely.
पांच क्या है? Most likely. One क्या है? Least likely. Correct?
Least likely.
That is called a Likert scale. So anybody who has done MBA or has worked a little bit with data would know a Likert scale. In questions पे generally yes no नहीं करते, we put a Likert scale. It also lets us know the promoters, the detractors, and the people who are neutral, or rather people who sit on the fence. Who are these people? So let us talk about promoters. Promoters का score बताइए. Anybody who knows what is the promoter? Who is considered to be a promoter?
On a scale of 1 to 10, if you score 9 and 10, it's a promoter.
Yes.
And 8 would be neutral. 7 and 8, and 6 and below is
6 and below,
yeah.
detractors. In short, not promoters. Thank you for sharing that. So when we say somebody is a promoter, it means that they're enthusiastic, they love to come to work. अब वही वाली बात है. Please make note. The questions do not have to have the same language. Also, you do not have to have Gallup 12. You can also have 15. You can have 50, 50. You can have 5. But the idea is that 12 psychologically is supposed to be a question count which is comfortable for people to answer. उससे ज्यादा होता है तो scientists say that it becomes irritating for people to respond. So how many of you have given a psychometric test and gotten fed up because it is 50 questions? Too many questions. एक ही बात को घुमा घुमा के पूछ रहे हैं. The intent might be very good. So most of the time when human resources designs these questions, or even you as a learning expert design a training feedback, you are really eager to know how people felt. So I remember one of my boss used to say, हर एक सेक्शन सब सेक्शन का फीडबैक लो. What worked for you, what didn't work for you, what is that one thing you will apply on the job, what is that one thing that you did not understand. ऐसे करके ना हर एक सेक्शन का अलग अलग लो, फिर ओवरऑल फीडबैक लो. But what would happen is when we would send out the training feedback form, people by the 7th or 8th question would be so fed up, they will just write bogus nonsense feedbacks because our the motto was we would not let people leave the classroom till the time they fill the feedback form. तो कुछ भी भर देते थे, which can work in your favor, but there is an equal and opportune a probability that people will just write junk in your feedback because they want to get out of there. Some people will say बाद में भर देंगे and they never fill the form later. Some people take the hard copy form and they say बाद में जमा कर देंगे. They never do it. They never scan it. They never send it. So why are we having this conversation? This conversation is paramount for all of us, and thank you for asking this question. It is important for us to design our feedback in a way which is enjoyable for people to provide. Have you already covered Kirkpatrick's level 5? Sara kar liya hai. You must have read it. Have you read it, girl? Not
Yes.
yet. You have? Okay, great. So what is level number 5? जिसने yes बोला है वो फंस गया. Now what?
ROI.
Okay. What
ROI.
is level 5? ROI. Okay, what does ROI mean?
Return on investment on obviously whatever the training function has gone through and what is the outcome it is generating at end.
Exactly. So Kirkpatrick's level, thank you. Kirkpatrick's level number 5 was added later. But before that, there are certain levels of checking feedback from people. The first level is reaction, level 1. What is level 2?
Learning.
Number 3, level 3.
Behavior.
Behavior.
Number 4.
Results.
Results.
Yes.
ROI.
So when we talk about reaction, आपको गंदा खाना खिला दिया क्लासरूम में, लोग चिढ़ गए, उन्होंने आपको रिएक्शन में खराब फीडबैक दे दिया. Nothing to do with you. Okay, that is your level 1, so on and so forth. The stickiness of your learning truly gets evolved if you do level 2 and level 3 as well. In some situations, doing 2 might still be possible, but in case you have limited reach or you are not able to interact with your learners on a regular basis, or it was a one-off training, or it was a training, technical training, SOP, etc., you might not be able to conduct level 3 and level 4 as effectively as you would like. So Kirkpatrick also, when you look at the theory in detail or in action, you would notice that they also keep reinforcing the fact that feedback has to be enjoyable and also has to bring out the real reasons behind the rating. So now you might ask, कि एनपीएस सर्वे करने का मतलब क्या है. So one of the things that we have understood as a psyche is we human beings love to feel safe at a workplace. Being safe at a workplace would also allow us, without we even letting us know, a tendency to invite people whom we love and care for into our environment. For example, if you're going to watch a movie, whom will you take with you? Will you take an absolute stranger? Will you take somebody whom you do not like? Or if you know it's a wonderful Mission Impossible last part releasing in May, whom will you pre-book it with? You will book it with somebody whom you're close to, who you would like to have the great experience with you. I mean, we all have friends with whom we joke that अरे मैं फंसाऊं तो तेरे को भी फंसाऊंगा. But the whole idea is that psychology says that if we are in a situation which we are really enjoying, we like to share it with people whom we love and care for. So the NPS question number 12, the dreaded question for human resources is, would you like somebody to work with you here? Not the exact wordings, but then also, by the way, there is no copyright on this. When you're using Gallup's 12, then the copyright kicks in. But if you repurpose the question as per the culture and the nature of your organization, it is fine. But in some way or the other, we have to probe the psyche of people, whether they feel psychologically safe and they feel that they will be able to grow in the organization. So if it's a maybe, then also it's not bad. If it is yes, definitely it's good. And if it is a no, then we have to do some introspection. And that introspection can come from the rest of the questions, where we ask, were you rewarded for your efforts? When was the last time you were rewarded for your efforts? So whenever you have time, look at the Gallup 12. You will see the questions. I myself have gone ahead and edited the Gallup 12 to do a 16 question survey for an organization. Once I did 25, and I made it adaptive survey, which meant that depending upon the response to a question, the other questions will or will not show. And I requested people to come into a room. I offered them coffee and cookies to make sure that they devote 15 minutes undivided attention to complete that survey. It was a Google form, but even then, I invited them for coffee and cookies and said, if you could kindly open your laptops and do this with me, and we can have a mini discussion, and then you can go back. That's also incentivizing the feedback to make sure that people look forward to it, don't consider that to be a burden. Going back to the conversation that I was having about promoters and detractors. Promoters will push your organization forward. They're enthusiastic. They want to jump and dance and they want to promote the organizations. They are your champions. Detractors are the one who are going to largely contribute to the toxicity and the dissatisfaction at the work. They're very vocal, they're very loud, and they're huge influence. There are pockets of people like that in an organization. Hitesh, I've seen your hand. Just give me 1 minute while I finish and then I'm coming to you. Then we are talking about the people who sit on the fence. These are dangerous people, okay? वो promoter नहीं है, वो detractor भी नहीं है. Those are the people who sit on the fence and they wait. They wait for things to go okay or get better, or they wait for things to fall from the level that they expect it should be at, and based on that, they slip sides. Any of you who are Hindi native speakers would know this as bin pende ka lota. They will change sides on depending upon the situations. While for human resources and training, these people are quick converters. They will quick, you can convert them into promoters, you can also convert them into detractors based upon what kind of an experience you are giving them. But because of this unpredictable nature, many organizations count them in detractors when they are calculating the scope because they are not predictable. You can't really consider them to be promoters. तो उनको detractors में गिन लो. Fence को भी वो detractor में, sitting on the fence. वो इधर भी जा सकते हैं, इधर भी जाते हैं. That is why we are calling them sitting on the fence. Now, Hitesh, you had a question. Kindly go ahead.
Yeah, you shared that situation where you took the survey where you had served them coffee and all. In that scenario, obviously, was the trainer sitting along?
Sitting in the sense in the presence when
Yeah,
the
in
feedback was
was
being
the
taken?
feedback given in presence of the trainer?
No,
Okay. And then,
totally anonymous.
because many times actually it actually acts as an influence in one way. Or
No,
and they
no,
feel,
no.
okay.
So I headed the human resources function there. And I was taking feedback, and there was a specific trainer who got fantastic feedback every time you'd roll out feedback. So I would get these papers. On that time, I'm talking about Adam ka Jamana, when we would get paper feedback forms, which we would translate into electronic forms. And then we got the idea of first time launching an electronic feedback form, which this trainer specifically resisted. तो मुझे समझ नहीं आया, why is he resisting? His scores have always been wonderful. So what I did was I converted without the knowledge of the trainer into a Google form. तब मैंने नया नया Google form सीखा था. And I put this group of people together saying that अभी अभी तुम्हारी training हुई है, and the trainer had no idea I'm doing this. Why don't we do a conversation? I didn't even call them for feedbacks because mobile phones were even at that time very rampant and people would just message. So I said, I want to have a conversation with you guys. I have been blessed. I have been, I would say, lucky that people have not run away whenever I've said that yeah, I'm going to have a conversation. They have generally loved me and respected me as a human resource person. So when I called them, they happily came. First of all, I had this churan box in my room. Whenever people would come, they would always get some goodie to eat or something interesting to take away. So I used to personally invest in these things. You know, just having some confectionery in my room, having some nice quality biscuits in my room, basically some knickknacks. So people would generally look forward to talking to the department. We are a team of like 6, 7, 8 people. So I decided that this will be too big a group to host in my room. So we did a cafeteria, sorry, pantry kind of a setting. I arranged for good quality beans coffee. And I said, you're going to have we are approaching the end of the year. We want to have a survey. And this is going to be anonymous. You guys are free to participate. If you don't feel like, please go outside, have a smoke, have some food, come back, take a break. But then I will be really grateful if you participate. So interestingly, I sent it to 40 people, all 40 arrived. So I requested them to get their laptops as well. And I also said that if you are on a timed break, you can leave the laptop in my office, take your break and collect it from my place. I will talk to supervisors. So because it was so, what should I say, meticulously orchestrated, people were hit with a surprise. They had no idea what they were going to do. So they reached there, कहते किसका feedback देना है? मैंने कहा latest program जो अभी आप लोगों ने किया है. I didn't even take the name of the trainer. I said, your latest training you've done, why don't you give it to me? That way it becomes trainer agnostic. Unless you want to give some very specific feedback for a trainer, this is training agnostic. Just give me the feedback for the last training that you have attended. And I knew the last one they had attended with was with this gentleman. So they gave the feedback and they left. Interestingly, they gave very interesting feedbacks. They did not give the raving feedbacks that we would generally get when we would get paper forms. So there were things like there is repetition of information. Then there were things like it is a little intimidating. There are feedbacks like there are favoritism in the group of training that happens. So often people who struggle a little bit in terms of English language are not given special attention to. So there was feedback that were really something that we all need to work on. So that is when I didn't give the Gallup 12. That is also very important to note because people know the format of those questions. वो रटे रटाए हो जाते हैं. And if you notice sometimes even with yourself, every same question we ask, every year ये लोग कुछ नहीं करते हैं, nothing changes. So people kind of disengage from those surveys and they don't give the honest answer. So I had changed the language in a way which meant that it has really been customized to their needs. So sorry, very long explanation of the situation to a short question. But it
And
actually
truly,
took away the training bias.
yeah, because actually, if the thing was welcoming, that's the reason that open survey came.
Exactly.
Yeah, thanks
And
for
it came with a, you know, कि अरे वाह directly हमसे पूछ रहे हैं. It's a 400 team, 400 member team. सिर्फ हमको पूछा. It was a random. Another thing I did was I picked up a mixed group of people, different age groups in that feedback small focus group. So you can also decide how you want to kind of scratch it. And again, it is best if you do it in the knowledge of the trainer. In my situation, the requirement was very different. So that's why I took a different approach. So that's that. So now everybody clear about what an NPS survey is? Yes, no,
Yes,
maybe?
ma'am. Yes.
Okay. Excellent. Okay, now let's go back to what we were talking about today. Today we are going to talk about training plans and how the plan falls in place. Now, if you look at your course material, there's a lot of text in your course material which in detail describes about training room setting, kya hona chahiye, kya nahi hona chahiye, what are the few things required to be done. There's a lot of information. But for your benefit, what I've done is I've not copy pasted any of that information in the PowerPoint. Rather, I've tried to provide visual aids for all of you to connect with it. So when you read your study material, it doesn't sound foreign to you, but it also is easier for you to digest and assimilate. So if you can see my screen, I'm going to show you a training plan. So what are the steps of designing an effective training plan? I didn't spend too much time on the topic slide because the topic slide pretty much contains 6 or 7 topics that we want to cover today, which primarily is going to be conversations on the various steps that are required to create a training plan. So if you see, it's very self-explanatory. Determining the training objectives first, then defining the target audience. Number 3, conducting the training needs assessment. Number 4, addressing the question of budget and resources. Number 5, determining training methods and tools. This includes digital technology. Number 6, outlining the training schedule or the training plan, as we would like to call it. Then identify the roles and responsibilities, then measure the impact, and then follow up and continuous improvement. Now, I have all of you already looked at the ADDIE model or not? तो instructional design में ADDIE model पढ़ लिया?
Yes.
ठीक है. So did this ring a bell? I purposely removed it from the screen. Did it ring a bell when I told you about the training plan? Let's revise ADDIE. What is ADDIE, ADDIE? Quickly.
Analyze,
Design, develop,
develop,
Analyze, design, develop, implement, and evaluate.
Implement and evaluate. Based on that, so interestingly, it is such an amazing model, and thank you for the responses. It is such an interesting model that a lot of the things that we do in training can fit into it. It is so powerful. So even when you're designing a training plan, there are multiple moving pieces that you have to take care of. First of all, why have I, instead of doing just ADDIE, why have I added or introduced additional steps? It is to appreciate the nature of the training and how much of ingenious planning and meticulous organization is required when we are doing the planning for the training. So the training plan will obviously precede your course design, your content design, where the instructional design will come into play. So in a way that your training plan also caters to the need of high level of customization that is required based on your target audience. I don't remember last time whether we decided, do we always need to do a training audience analysis, or can we proceed with a training without doing a training data analysis? What is your general feeling? Do we always need to do a training need analysis? Sorry, audience analysis?
situation based.
I think we
Every time
should
you might not
because
get that thing, so
Luxury.
you need to have the mix of everything, the
Okay.
content.
Someone else was saying it. Thank you.
I think
Someone
we
else
should
was
because
responding.
just to understand the psyche and how to impart that training to the people. So for an
Ah,
example, if you are providing a training to the factory workers, showing them
hmm,
AVs and giving them slides won't work.
hmm,
You'll
hmm,
have to give them more OJTs. So I
hmm,
think analyzing which kind of an audience we are catering to is very important.
hmm. So in addition to that, it's also putting in place the allowance for different styles of learning of people. So while you gave an excellent example of factory work, let us also take into consideration people who do not learn well in a classroom. For example, I don't learn well in a classroom. I get bored. I can get fidgety. I'm not saying that I do. I'm just taking myself as an example. If I get bored and fidgety, or वो slide पे slide आए जा रहे हैं, and I've done enough number of distant learning courses because I like to explore new things. Most of the times, I would like to do them SDT, self-directed training. I would not like to sit in a classroom. In case I'm going to engage with somebody, I would like it to be really, really fun, which means that a lot of conversation, lot of exercises, engaging videos, less amount of text on the slides, more amount of. So in large ways, I am a kinesthetic learner who likes to do things and learn And if you had given me an absolute choice between learning visually or through auditory, I would prefer a visual learning. Auditory is for fun, for audiobooks, etc., not for learning. If I had to learn by videos, etc., I would prefer to do it myself. Similarly, there are different styles of learning. Now, another question. Do we always get the luxury or the opportunity to gauge our trainees as to what kind of learning styles they are? I will save you the time. The answer is no. Most of the time in corporate settings, you do not get the time or the luxury to be able to do this analysis unless and until it is a senior leadership development kind of a training, or it's a training which is so crucial that you're given 3 months to plan it, which is a very rare occurrence nowadays. So let's look at the training steps and see within the limited time and the limited resources and the limited budgets and the high expectations, how can we make sure that our training plan is effective, efficient, and manages to hit the mark, if not exceed. So let's go back to our diagram, which we have put up on the screen. Let's look at the first step all over again, determining training objectives. Can someone tell me how should training objectives be? There is a word for it. It's a hint. It is closely related to goals. What should training objectives be?
Smart.
Smart.
Exactly. Saw number 100 marks. Training objectives should be SMART. And since you have mentioned SMART, I am assuming most of you already know what the full form of SMART is. Would someone like to attempt? What is the full form of SMART?
Specific, measurable, achievable, realistic, time.
ओहो कितना ही बोर हो गए हो तुम लोग ये नाम सुन सुन के. So we have a little bit of training objectives detailing in the next few slides as to how we match them with the Bloom's taxonomy. So have you covered Bloom's taxonomy already? You have?
Yes.
Okay, good. So let's connect Bloom's taxonomy to designing training objectives, because that is your first step. Because this assumes that your objectives or the outcomes that you're going to have is going to have a lasting impact, not the short-term memory retention, but long-term memory retention for people. Next step is to identify your audience. So let us say somebody says, Tina, they call you into your office, a fairly senior person, that is your chief learning officer calls you in and says that, Tina, by the end of December this year, this is your personal development plan. I have to make sure that you are ready for the next level, and the organization should be equipped with people who are not only exceeding the expectations, but also ready to take on larger roles. Okay. So how does that translate into a training plan? I will nod my head and say, okay, thank you, sir. I will take care of this. Or thank you, ma'am. I will take care of this. And I walk out of the office wondering, how do I get this done? For the personal development plan, I would be very comfortable because it is something that I have to work on myself. But when I have been given the goal that the organization should be ready with full of people who are not only exceeding in their roles, that means he or she has eliminated the average and the needs improvement. So this person, my chief learning officer, wants the quantum of our people in the higher section of the bell curve, which is the top performers, and definitely no need improvement kind of a population. How do I make sure who are the people whom I pick up to make sure that they are able to push this agenda forward? So my target analysis or target audience should be people who are either already high performing or on the higher bracket of high performing, the outer edges of average performers. And then my focus will be people who are on the lower end of average performance so that I can pull them up. This is also called pulling up, excuse me, performance levels of people. So when we pull up performance levels of people, first of all, you cannot be pulling up performance levels of people who are already top performers. What you should be doing is you should be using them as catalysts to pull their colleagues upwards. So you use them as coaches, you use them as mentors, you use them as champions, you use them as subject matter experts, and you pull the rest of the people who are pushing your agenda downwards. That means that you identify everybody who is a needs improvement, take some action, which might be a little bit unpopular action. Then you pick up the people who are average performers and divide them into 3 groups who are on the outer edge. Thoda sa kaam karke, you can push them into the high performer bracket. the ones who are in the middle who are willing to get better but need a little more hand holding, and the ones that are at the lower fringe will require intensive work. Now, question for all of you. The people who are on the average performance bracket and the three segments that I spoke about, should we consider all of them in one training program, or should we differentiate our training program for all the three kinds of people? What would be your thought?
It can be one.
Sorry?
It can be one so that there can be some peer learning.
Okay. Any other thoughts? And no answer is wrong, okay?
I think differentiation are required for
Okay. Anyone else thinks that we should have different kind of a strategy for three kinds of people?
So yeah, individual specialized cohorts would be
depending upon the needs, different programs.
Interesting. Okay. So let me mention that, like I said, there's no right or wrong answer here. I'm encouraging interaction for all of you to think. So let us say that we take a group of, let us say there are 100 average performers on which you now know कि मुझे इस साल काम करना है. Out of those 100, 20 of them are on the outer fringe of average performance. That means that they are almost really good. They just need a little bit push. If now my recommendation, you can choose your own recommendation. We can do a common orientation for all the people who are in the average bracket. Like you said, some peer-to-peer learning. But there is a high chance people who are on the outer fringe, who are really good, might get a little bored. They'll be like, क्या है इसमें, क्या नया सीखने को, पता तो है कि ये better करना है, and I will be getting a top rating next year, and I will be able to hit the ball out of the park. So while there's some people who enjoy mentoring and helping others, some might not, because there isn't too much of value they will be adding to themselves. जो तुमसे better नहीं है, तुमसे तुम क्या ही सीख लोगे? Maximum you will be mentoring them. So if you're bringing them into these sessions, you will be calling them as subject matter experts. You can call them as coaches, you can call them as mentors, you can call them as champions, and makes expectation very clear that we are not expecting you to learn something from it. Rather, you are here to help others grow. Well, if you set that expectation, there is a high chance people will not be disengaged. Otherwise, you will get a horrible training score that we want. Then comes the section which is truly average. Okay, there can be two reasons of they being average: limited competency, or there is a will issue, or just less amount of practice and less amount of exposure, which has caused them to continue performing at the level that they are. These are the people whom you need to concentrate and focus on. Why am I not telling you to concentrate and focus on the lower fringe? Because, like I said, when you look at the people who are on the fence, they can go this way or that way. The people who are on the lower fringe can also be people who needs improvement, but somehow they're surviving just by hanging in there. So your focus, if you want to prove, and you also want to set the agenda that your central learning officer, chief learning officer has given you, is to move this middle bracket to the higher bracket, to the outer fringe of average, or move it to the high performing. So your focus of learning training plan should be on the people, the quantum of people who sit in the middle or sit on the. Now that you know that you have done an orientation session for the entire average group, what you do is you focus on two types of programs. One program that is going to focus on the ones who are in the middle and the ones who are on the top. The top ones can go short-term assignments, can do long-term assignments, can do shadowing exercises, because they know the concept, they have the skill, they have the ability, they have the overall, they have the competency. All they require is more exposure, more practice, and more visibility for them to get better. So this longish rant that I went on is to give you an idea about how you do audience analysis. What are the few features you are going to use to design what I will do for these people, what I will do for someone else. The ones who are at the top also might enjoy some micro learning, can be a part of some kind of a mobile app that they can use. They can be a part of an exclusive discussion forum where there are some senior leaders who are willing to mentor them. All of that is in the hand of a learning expert as to how they want to propose the plan. But the chief learning officer is going to depend on you to make that proposal. If you're using your vanilla recommendations, there is a high chance it will not fly. Also, if you go and make a plan which is super expensive, it will not fly. So you have to hit the sweet spot where people are willing to look at your proposal and say yes. And when you are able to deliver results, they're willing to give you the budgets and also meet your ambitious plans of using something a little more expensive. So just bringing these pointers is my main reason is to talk about how the audience analysis works, and you're matching your personal goals and the organization personal goals uh, together will help you do a better training needs assessment. Now we have done the target audience analysis. Now let us really see, why is somebody in the outer fringe of average performance? So what is stopping this person from moving from here to there? It's a small push. So through a training need analysis, you basically get to know what are the few things that you have to work on. So the examples that I gave, that we send them on an on the job training or send them on a shadowing exercise, or you assign mentoring or coaching to them, or simply you send them on a long-term assignment to a different region with larger number of people. All of that will depend upon what the outcome of your training needs analysis is. So in a way, while I was talking last time, without showing you this graphic, I also covered the next point, which says assess budgets and resources. But let's break it down. Once you conduct a training need analysis, one of the things that's going to be as clear as day is 4 or 5 buckets. Remember, don't do more than 5, you will get confused. 4 or 5 buckets where you need to concentrate your training on. Now you have to decide how many of them will be a one-time training, how many of them will be an intervention-based training, and what will be the mode of these trainings. Is it going to be totally asynchronous? Is it going to be a blended learning approach? And how much of the 70-20-10 will you distribute? Because that's the blended learning, right? 70-20-10, what kind of activities are you going to distribute for different people? What is the amount of personalization of the learning path you're going to invest in? All of those decisions will happen in the step number 3 and step number 4. Assess budgets and assess resources. Now remember, why I spoke about budget, but also designing all of this will require resources in terms of technology resources, in terms of people who are going to not only implement the training, but also track it. Let us say we put a group of people on mentoring or we put them on a short-term assignment. उनको measure भी तो करना है. ये भी तो decide करना है कि कैसे उनको measure करेंगे, क्या करेंगे, what kind of proposals do we need to make, what kind of time budget and effort budget and technology budget do we need to look at, and how much do we have. Even if we would like to do something, if we don't have the budgets, we need to find out for alternatives. So what kind of alternatives we can do? If we do not have in-house training mechanisms, can we have a Udemy? Can we have a Simply Learn? Can we have something else? Can we have peer-to-peer learning? What kind of methods and processes can we implement to make sure that your need for that improvement to happen for the intended group of people is still met? Now, let's move to the next one, and then I'm going to take a pause for questions. Determining training methods and tools. So I did throw in a few words. What are those words? I said formal training, informal training, adaptive training, blended learning, 70-20-10 activities. What do these all words mean? They come to us as a part of the training faculty in various shapes and forms. So now let's try and demystify and also do a knowledge check. How many of you know what is the difference between synchronous and asynchronous training? Can somebody tell me? Difference between synchronous and asynchronous training. Nobody? There's some people who are Googling. I'm very sure. बताओ भाई.
In line with the objective that is synchronous, maybe.
See, at one point in time, you can have synchronous and asynchronous training happening. So let us say at ISTD, we are doing this session. It is synchronous. It is less flexible. You are on a schedule. There is a trainer. She's speaking at her own pace. You are having to engage with her. You can't necessarily pause me, go to the kitchen, get a snack and come back. So in synchronous, you are still engaging with the online presence of your facilitator. You are still using online tools, but it is not self-directed. It is not at your pace. It's a little rigid. and you do not have the flexibility to move around. Also, in addition to that, you cannot pause, you cannot rewind, you cannot replay. You will have to follow the schedule that is being followed, plus you have to have a stable internet connection. Let us look at asynchronous. You missed my lecture. Now, obviously, there are 22 people, there are a lot more people in this batch. They received the recording, they received the PowerPoint, they received the book. Now they are doing this by themselves. क्या बोलेंगे इसको? Asynchronous बोलेंगे. Because it is more self-directed. You decide which topic you want to listen to, what portion. तो आपको लगा टीना ने शुरू में जो बातें बोली मुझे तो already आता है. I'm going to fast forward and listen from here because this sounds interesting. That is the joy of asynchronous training. ऐसा भी है कि you do not require a continuous internet connection. So let us say you are going outside, you're going to a friend's place, and your friend says that I will be half an hour late. So just, hang there, wait for me, and I will join you in half an hour. And you were like, I had that lecture, I missed it. I want to listen to this lecture. You had downloaded it at your phone, so you don't really need a stable internet connection. You can listen it at your own pace. You can fast forward, you can rewind, you can pause. There is more flexibility. You can have just some snack while you're doing it. You can pause, you can walk around, you can also decide that, okay, I want to listen to it at 2x speed. So that's asynchronous. The same training, when it is not involved with a live facilitator, can be considered to be an asynchronous training. Now, what are the disadvantages? When you are in a synchronous training, you can directly provide feedback and receive feedback. You have questions, you get your doubts clarified straight away. But in asynchronous training, even for the trainer as well as for the trainee, the feedback mechanism is slow. For example, I will record my session at a certain speed and then I will send it to you and then you will listen to it and then you will tell me she's talking too fast. But you cannot give that feedback to the trainer. Right now, I will say, am I talking too fast? Or am I talking too slow for you to follow? And then you can tell me, no, 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 you can speak faster. But if somebody has already recorded a training and given it to you, like in Udemy and other places, the feedback mechanism is not necessarily fast enough for the changes to show up. Also, if you had to have a question answered, etc., you can put up your hand and answer. Get an answer right now because we are 22 people. But if you are like 108 people in this session, I might not have been able to answer your question, but still there is a chance that I will answer by the end of the day because you will put your question in the chat box. In asynchronous, you will have to find an email ID, mail the question, depend upon the facilitator's response time to get a response. So that's a flip side. Your discussions, your feedback is slower, your requirement of internet is high when you go for a typical synchronous training. Whereas in asynchronous, you can pace it out. अब समझ आ गया सिंक्रोनस और एसिंक्रोनस? जब इनको एक साथ मिक्सी में डाल के मिला देते हैं तो वो हो जाता है blended learning. So you have elements of asynchronous and you also have elements of synchronous. So ideally, this training that we are doing is a blend of both synchronous and asynchronous. You get a live facilitator, you get presentation slides, you get content, but you also get a live class recording, which you can listen to at your own place. So blended learning is the way to go. So let's demystify blended learning. Blended learning works because you can also put in the 70, 20, 10 along with it. Ab dekho, I'm building on this. If you implement blended learning in the 70, 20, 10 format, you are ensuring classroom, you are ensuring mentoring, you are also ensuring on the job. So by doing all of that, you are giving a holistic experience to your learners. And you are pushing the buttons of the people who are already high performing to become even better. You are supporting the people who are performing average so that they can become extraordinary. And the people who are at the lower fringes, in case they have been held back because of their competency, support, or exposure, or plain and simple disengagement or willingness, they will start coming up the ladder as an after effect. There's an effect also. When you see everybody getting better, you also want to get better. Earlier, you didn't want to. So the placebo effect works largely. Now your homework is to find out for me what is the difference between hybrid learning and blended learning. Anybody knows? Hybrid learning and blended learning. First of all, are they the same things? And secondly, if they're different, what is the difference? अभी गूगल मत करो, बाद में
So
बताना.
according to me, hybrid learning can be a mix of classroom trainings and practical trainings, whereas blended learning sorry, hybrid can be online and offline,
Hmm.
and blended can be a mix of two things, whether it's
Hmm.
online or offline.
Hmm.
So blended can be a mix of two same things in a different, in a same thing,
Hmm.
and hybrid can be, two different things in two different ways. One
Okay.
can be online, offline.
Good, no, good attempt. But even then, I would like to discuss in the next classroom. I want to begin with the difference, clear difference between hybrid and blended, because many people do not understand it. But thank you for the attempt. So let's kind of write it down. What is the difference? And also, what is the game changer for training right now? And if I say it's adaptive learning, what does adaptive learning mean? Anybody has heard about adaptive learning? Anybody who has implemented LMS will know what is an adaptive learning. What is adaptive learning?
Is it similar to self-paced learning or
Yes, it
suits?
is.
Yeah.
It is, but with a twist. Who can tell me the twist?
So the adaptive learning, the curriculum or the course, if it's an assessment, the difficulty level would vary according to the response of the participant.
Yes. So when somebody asked me what is an NPS survey, the first thing I asked is, does anybody know about NPS survey? मैंने क्या किया? What did I do? I adapted my learning to your requirements. So if somebody would have said, yes, yes, I know about NPS survey, I would have said, okay, that means this group already has an awareness of this. So I will not go dummy down. I will not begin my level here. I will begin from here because everybody knows about it. Now, if for example, I asked Kirkpatrick level सबने कर दिया, yes, बोलते ही मैं यहाँ तक jump हो गई. Then I move from here to here. That is adaptive learning. We do it as trainers unconsciously, but sometimes it is necessary when it comes to technical topics to gauge what people know and what people do not know. Like generally, in people who follow the typical traditional way of learning, teachers, academicians, college professors, they don't care where you are. It's unfortunate, but they don't. Not all of them. Some of them are smart enough. I was fortunate enough to have some professors who would always ask, "क्या जो नहीं आता है वो बता दो." Rest of it you guys can read by yourself. So again, not boasting, but I studied in Stephens. In Stephens, classes सबसे ज़्यादा होती थी. But when people will walk into the classroom, they will always ask you, what will we cover today? All professors, I do not know why. Maybe it was an implicit code. They will say, what will we cover today? What are the few things you would like to cover? These are the topics on the board. And what would you like me to cover? They would ask. So people would stand up, put their hands up saying that. Some people say, please cover everything. This is new for us. Some people will say only these three. Rest of it we'll read by ourselves. The moment we would say rest of it we'll read by ourselves, the professor will start writing the names of the books. It was a torturous exercise. It was not as easy. It is not as easy as it is today. You will have to find those library books. You will have to do photocopies. You will have to read from them because you made the choice. We as a group in the classroom made the choice. ये हम खुद पढ़ लेंगे. So they will give you 6 or 7 books. They will even give you page numbers that we need to read to be able to understand those topics. And then they would only focus on the topics that all of us are agreed that we want to learn. Can be quantum physics, can be anything, whichever topic we have picked up, and they will give us the option. Largely, that's also a way of adaptive learning, but unfortunately, not all colleges or schools follow that method. So brilliant children get bored. They start playing with the chalk. They start doodling because we are telling them things that they already know, which is way below their comprehension level. It is they have already learned about it. For example, in classroom, there would be teachers who would be teaching about different kind of planets in the solar system, which we've already read in the NCERT book, but the teacher is still telling us. So that's an example of non-adaptive learning, a non-adaptive facilitation also. But when you see, especially in corporates and in our current age group, it doesn't work. It doesn't even work in schools nowadays. We have to gauge the level at which our audience is. If the audience already has enough understanding of the topic that we are going to cover, we adapt our learning methodology accordingly. We make it more of question answer, engagement, example, practical application rather than theoretical application. That is adaptive learning. Have I confused you? Are you still with me? Still with me?
Yeah, got it.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Make sense? So when I said in an LMS, you experience adaptive learning, what did I mean? So somebody said कि वो शुरू में एक exam होता है, you get to know how much you scored on it, and based on that, the tool will begin the training from there. So many of you will notice, especially I've experienced this in Accenture. What they did is they will make you do this update skills inventory every 3 months. That means you have to add skills every 3 months. The reason is it's a consulting organization. They always are looking for people with different kind of skills. So they encourage skill development. They gave us beautiful softwares, repository, trainings that we could do. Now, because it became a little bit mandatory that we had to upgrade our skills, it became a burden. It became a pressure with a full-blown job. So what they said is fine. If you do not have to, you don't want to learn all of this, just tell us that you are able to, you are competent enough to skip this training. So you go there. There is a mastery level full section. You go click on one of the trainings and it says, okay, take the test. If you're clearing the test, we will say you are certified. You don't need to do the training. So all of us will attempt, and it is going to be given only one attempt. Okay. So you go and answer. If you score 80% or 85, I think it was 85. If you score 85%, it simply says, and the text also was very interesting. Aha, looks like you have already mastered it. And then it will bring a congratulations, you don't need to complete this training, adaptive learning. If you score less than that, it would say, well, looks like you will need to do this module. Please, would you like to schedule it or would you like to start right away? So we would say, okay, let's schedule it. And then you have to finish it within certain timeline. That's an example of adaptive learning. In LMSs and in games, you experience it at a different level. You begin, and then there is a game level that you need to clear. If you are, if the initial test tells that you are already at level number 3, the game will open for you at level number 4. It will not make you go through 1, 2, or 3, because it has recognized that you already have covered these concepts, so you can straight away begin at an advanced level. That is called adaptive learning. So next time, let's begin with hybrid and blended ka difference so that we can demystify that for you. For now, let's go back to our chart and see what else is there. In fact, I've covered a lot of things haphazardly, but I think putting them in perspective also helps. So we spoke about assessing budget, assessing resources. We spoke about training methods and tools. This is what exactly I spoke about. Methods, informal, formal, blended, asynchronous, synchronous, various types, various methods that we can use. Then there is a training schedule. Okay. Then there is identifying roles and responsibilities, measuring the impact. We'll cover all of that. Maybe we'll come back to the slide again. But in the meanwhile, I want to take you to the next slide. And what is the next slide? The next slide is what I promised, matching Bloom's taxonomy to decide how you will be designing your learning objectives. I have put SMART at the bottom, SMART, as you said, specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, timely. So the right-hand side are the learning objectives and how you design them. So while it might be very easy for you to say that learning objective design kar do, but actually we have to take care of the 6 cognitive needs of humans, which is covered in the Bloom's taxonomy. So I'm going to be quiet for a minute or so for you to absorb the information on the screen. And then I'm going to focus on the right-hand side of the screen that talks about how the learning objective design will happen. For example, at the lowest level, describe, relate, tell, and find. I'm going to cover this, but before that, I'm going to be quiet for a minute for you to absorb this information. I know I'm low on patience. Everybody okay? Gone through it, or do you need more time?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Gone through it, have an idea? Okay. So I'm going to stop sharing right now. So let's understand how much you have understood about Bloom's taxonomy. Who can tell me what really is this taxonomy other than this triangle that everybody shows you? What is Bloom's taxonomy? It can be plain layman language. It's okay.
It can be the various layers or stages of learning.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Anyone else?
I believe it is functioning also from the cognitive domain.
Okay. So have you guys done the cognitive training paper? Have you covered it?
A part of it was
Okay. So what is cognitive training? Why is the word cognitive used with it?
Related with the mental abilities.
Your mental ability. So basically, it is a large portion of working with your brain. I'm not saying the rest of the time you don't work with your brain, but basically, cognitive training largely depends upon the functionality of how your brain and your mind responds to how the learning is happening. So let me ask you another very weird question. Is the brain and the mind two same things or different things?
Two different things.
Okay, so let's hear. Who said two different things? Can you kindly clarify? What do you mean by that?
So according to me, brain processes that information and then gives that feedback to the mind to do things about it.
Hmm.
So I think it works like that or vice versa. That's
Hmm.
what I believe.
Okay. And even thank you so much for actually considering that as a fact, because many people would say, they're, how can they be different? The mind is the brain and the brain is the mind. So very few people actually would say that, well, they're two different things. Okay. What else?
It could be a
Anyone else? Sorry.
heart and head. So
Heart and
my
head.
mind,
Okay.
no, it thinks about the logic, and the heart thinks about the emotions.
Okay. So the mind interacts with the environment where you are at this point in time. The mind is in close touch with your body, the neurons. The neurons connect to the brain, but the mind is in close touch with the point of views that are being thrown around you. For example, if I start scolding you right now and I make you feel terrible, your brain knows the reality is you are not terrible, but it will still feel bad because the mind is throwing that information to the brain that you are supposed to feel bad. Okay. So the mind is the one which is present in the classroom with you in whichever shape and form. Even if it is a remote training that you're conducting for people, remember that the mind is there and the mind is going to send the information to the brain to process. And based on that, short-term learning, long-term learning will happen. If there is a high engagement, what will happen? The mind will process the information in a way that it will be enjoyable enough for the temporary memory to become a permanent memory. That means it moves from the frontal side of the cortex to the long-term memory to the back of your head, the hippocampus. Then no matter how good your training is and how well you cater to the cognitive need, if you do not match the need of repetition to make information permanent, the information will not be stored. By the fourth or fifth week, you would have forgotten everything, more than 90%. So, as a trainer, your job is to make sure one, to engage with the mind based upon the cognitive needs. And then, after the engagement finishes, you also have to make sure that you bake in repetitive exercises for people to continually practice the information that you have provided and also embed something called active recall. Who can tell me what is active recall? What is active recall?
Maybe checking for the retention of information from time to time.
Or reminding the trigger points. For example, I just now spoke about what we had spoken about in the last session. It's an active recall. It is reminding people on how we are connecting this session to the previous session. And in that act, we are also refreshing what we had remembered in the last session. Some could have remembered immediately, some couldn't. And there is no right or wrong, there is no good or bad here. What we are saying is that by repeating the concepts that we had done. इसीलिए क्लास में क्या कराते हैं शुरू में summary, कल क्या पढ़ा था. It is a very potent way of doing an active recall. For example, in this session, I did speak about, last time we had spoken about XYZ. So next session, I will do an active recall on blended learning and hybrid learning, and I've implanted the trigger already for all of you to be prepared for it. For example, if I'm using a funny example, I'm going to repeat that funny example in the next session to make sure that you remember. Or if you're using a story, or if you're using a case study, or if you've given people names. For example, your name is Sham for this example. If you go to session number 6, and this you had done in session number 1, do you remember when I made you Sham? This is what we did. That's also a way of active recall. What we are taught in the forgetting curve, if you have covered it, is, and that will be covered in cognitive. So अगर cognitive में cover किया होगा करेंगे, that the forgetting curve tells us that unless and until you repeat something at least 4 times, it doesn't move from short-term memory to long-term memory. That means we have to have ways and triggers and methodology baked into our training, be it online, be it offline, be it blended, be it any form or shape. It can be quizzes, it can be games, it can be exercises, it can be assignments, it can be case studies, it can be project, it can be viva. Any form that you take up, there has to be a method and an attempt of active recall and to any effort to make sure that you are countering the forgetting curve and making sure that you're repeating the information at least 4 times so that your learners can remember. All of that is a lie where people say that अरे 20% से ज़्यादा किसी को याद नहीं रहता. Those are just numbers people throw at you. Science tells us, psychology tells us that if you repeat information smartly 4 times, there's a high chance that more than 90% of the people will remember it. Now, the game is to make your training so relevant and so practical that people will be able to automatically use it on their job every day. So your effort to try and put in repetition efforts is continuously minimized because anyways people are going to use it on the job. How do you introduce that? You can put a visual aid. You can give them a checklist which introduces all the concepts you have taught them so that the checklist is in front of them and they're using it again and again and again. You as a trainer also have to bake in methodologies to make sure that you check with them, is it working? So I give you a checklist and I say that you use it whenever you um, do your analytics or you begin your Excel sheet, whatever kind of a training I have given you, you will follow these steps. For example, I mess up data. So if I mess up data, my analysis is not correct, my work is unorganized. So I give you a checklist that Tina, whenever you will begin your Excel program, first of all, you'll make a copy of the formulae that you're going to use. You will use VLOOKUP, you will create separate sheets. Once you go from here to here, you will always save the file on regular basis, or you will use Microsoft Copilot to. So I will give you kind of a map, or I will give you a checklist to make sure that Tina organizes her job well. If I have a good trainer, or I have a good discussion forum where there are experts or SMEs available, I will go and say, while this worked for a while, these are the few things I got stuck in. The trainer is getting feedback, the trainee is getting feedback, the active recall is happening, and now the learner can also get support, additional support. For example, the trainer says, "Acha, mujhe dikhao kya hua? Where did you go wrong? Where did you struggle?" Now the learner is getting that ecosystem or the support to get better. Or maybe you can handhold and say, "Okay, you know what? Let's do this together. I will take screen control. Let me show you how you can do this better. And then try it again. And tomorrow, let's connect again." This is a very intense, personal kind of a support system. But then there can be larger things, for example, public speaking or something like a presentation to a senior leadership. And you just gone through an executive presence training, or you have gone through a soft skills training, conflict management or conflict avoidance kind of a training. In that, the opportunities to practice and get feedback won't be too many. God forbid, there shouldn't be any in case of conflict management. But if it does happen, you have to have your active record set up in a different way, which brings to a very important topic. With your learning ecosystem, you have to make sure that you implant ways to keep getting feedback, level 2, level 3 of Kirkpatrick on a regular basis, so that eventually level 5 gets attained. And you can also document those efforts to make sure how you have worked on the outer fringe of average performers to push them into top performers, which was your initial chief learning officer's goals. So let's look at the Bloom's taxonomy picture right now. So for people at different levels, what are the cognitive needs and what do they require for you to design learning objectives? So for people who are at the basic Bloom's level at the bottom, so let me bring the screen up again. क्विकली करेंगे, बहुत ज्यादा डिटेल में इसको रटने की जरूरत नहीं है. What you have to do is you have to have a broad level understanding so that your objective design becomes simple piece of cake. That is what I would like it to be for you. So when we are talking about the basic cognitive need, which is at the lowest pyramid, we are saying people learn by recalling facts and basic concepts. Okay. So here we are saying what are the outcomes of this thought process or this level or this cognitive need. You have to define, you have to duplicate, you have to list, you have to memorize, you have to repeat. All of this aids this cognitive need. So what we are saying is that when you are doing the learning objective, it has to have elements of describing, people being able to relate it to existing information, then repeat it back, tell, and then find that information. So first of all, you describe it to them, you relate it to them. So your design of training, the modules, your questions, your quizzes that you're designing, or self-assessment questionnaire, or any other way in which you are going to assess them, has to have an element of description, relatability to the existing information they already know, and then for them to articulate it, and then say, after they articulate it, give them an exercise or give them a opportunity to find that information themselves, to gratify their need that are mujhe yaad hai, I now know this and I can perform this, the sense of self-satisfaction that I am capable enough to do this. Same is the case with other levels. I don't want to go through all of them, but this is how we have kind of broken it down. Let us take one more level. Understand that cognitive need is met by what? By explaining ideas or concepts. In fact, in this group of people, I'm doing that. I'm explaining ideas and concepts and also using the next cognitive level, that is the application of the concepts that we're talking about. So what is my learning objective? I am outlining it, I'm explaining it, and then I'm predicting how it can happen in your work environment. That's why I'm giving you practical examples. And then we are talking about application, which is the next cognitive need. You illustrate. How am I illustrating? I'm using right now the Bloom's taxonomy to show you this is existing information that you've learned in your course, and I'm extrapolating it to show you a new concept as to how you will be designing learning objectives. And in the way of doing so, I'm solving your need to be able to design learning objectives that are meaningful. This is how this chart relates. If you truly sit with it and you spend some time, your learning objective design will become really, really smart. Why? Because now, without even you knowing, based upon your audience's need, you are designing objectives which will be sharp and which will hit them home, which means that they will really enjoy, because those learning objectives will be easy for them to attain because you have customized them and it feels effortless. Let's
Can
look
we
at
say,
one other. Sorry, go ahead.
yeah, can we say that, for example, this remember the first level is there?
Hmm.
Can I
Hmm.
relate it with the existing problem, why this training was created? You go back to the
Hmm.
problem which actually arise the need of that training, and then you
Hmm.
can relate, and then it will be easy for everybody to actually relate. I don't know.
Exactly. Why did I land up in this training room? I
Okay.
landed up because I was in a car factory and I did not put the screws on the wheel properly, and the entire car tanked. I caused a lot of loss for the organization because I couldn't remember the information and I could not do it sequentially enough. So my cognitive need was to remember information so that I do not do the same mistakes. So my training is based on that whole premise of these are the few things that are the problems that we need to fix. I need to memorize a couple of things to be able to function properly. So that's my brain's cognitive need. And my learning objective will be, how do we ensure that Tina doesn't forget this ever again? So that is going to be a learning objective. So your test will largely ask Tina, okay, Tina, look at this. What is that three things that if you do not do, this whole thing will, crash? You can do a visual avatar based game, or you can simply do you remember those exams we used to give in school where there will be a comprehension paragraph and there would be questions at the bottom? So you give a scenario and then you ask Tina to respond. If you test her knowledge in certain number of ways, you know, okay, has her need, the cognitive need to remember been met or not. And thank you for bringing that example up.
Thank you.
Could everybody relate to it or did everybody lose it?
It's a good one.
Okay,
I could certainly.
somebody's hand went up. I'm sorry, somebody's hand. Whose hand is it? Let's see.
Can you repeat that?
Okay, can I repeat that? Okay, so let us say that Tina works in an automobile factory. Okay, she has been identified for a training because the basic requirements of how she puts the wheel sockets etc. together, she tends to be forgetful about it. So उसको schema नहीं रहता याद कि अपने काम का जो SOP का schema, she is not able to remember. She tends to forget it. Why does she tend to forget it? Maybe she is a visual learner. Maybe she doesn't remember information carefully. Maybe she hasn't practiced enough. Whatever the reason is, that she tends to forget things, which causes problems later in the conveyor belt. So let us say Ram, for an example. Ram is at the end of the assembly who puts the car together, oversees it for errors, and he says, okay, this car is certified. Tina is sitting at point number 3. So point number 4, point number 5, point number 6, everybody has done the job well. But Tina's job was to put the wheelbase together and put in the screws and put everything in place, but she hasn't done it. Now, when it comes to quality check, the whole thing tanks. Now, the whole thing has to be done again, which is additional work for everybody, additional cost for the factory, etc., etc. So the supervisor said, Tina is good, she's sincere, her attitude is nice, but it seems that she can't remember this. So send her to training so that some way they can give her a way that she can remember this and this mistake is not repeated again and again. So Tina comes to the class. So the trainer understands the need, designs the learning objective in a way that whenever Tina's questionnaire I'm going to ask, or a group of Tinas, similar kind of problem, the objective will be to check their memory. So whatever information we are giving them, how are they storing in the memory? One example can be ask them quiz. Second can be give them a scenario and say, okay, Tina, what is missing here? Or give them a mini game where you have to say, spot the difference or what is missing before it goes to level number 2. Okay, this is level 1, what is missing? So these kind of learning objectives, if you bake in, you are ensuring the need to remember, the cognitive need to remember is met. And when Tina goes back to the factory, she does a better job. Does it help? Ab samajh aaya?
Yeah.
Good. Thank you for bearing with me. Sometimes I know I do speak a little fast. Okay. Now I'm going to take the last, how much time? Oh, wow. We are a little behind today. Okay. Nevertheless, I'm going to take you to the presentation, back to the presentation, and we are going to now look at a sample training plan. Very simple. I've done it very close to our home, which is human resources. Very basic training. All of us have been a part of it or we have designed it. How do you put a timeline for training? Just an example. Day 1 to 3, somebody new has come in, it's onboarding. Then week 1, there is specific training. There is month 1, application of the knowledge. There is month 2 and 3, there is check-ins. So basically what we're doing is a sample training plan can have timelines baked in it in a way that you are doing regular check-ins to see that it is on track. That's just an example. Now let's look at what a training objective should also look like if you have to do it objective wise objective. So if you let us say that there's 6 objectives, you should have a table which has all 6 of them nicely listed out. One, what is the training objective? An example is short term, teach new hires to use the HR portal. Then there's the target audience, which we in detail spoke about. Then there's the methods and tools. What kind of methods and tools will you be using with this target audience? What are the outline, time schedule outlines? So your Excel sheet that you're designing for the training plan should have all these elements. And most important, ladies and gentlemen, for your ROI level 5 to be met, metrics have to be decided. And what are these metrics called? Who will tell me? How will you measure success? What do you call these metrics? I have a special name for it. What do you call these metrics? Anybody wants to attempt?
The evaluation parameters. Is it?
Evaluation parameters. What else can you call them?
You can call them the learning outcomes.
Learning outcomes. What else can you call them? अभी मैंने बोला क्या? You will measure the success. What will you call them? MOS. Measures of success. While measures of success is different from KPIs and KRAs. इस पे खत्म करेंगे आज. बोलो KPI और KRA में क्या फर्क है? कौन बताएगा? What is the difference between a KPI and a KRA?
KRAs are the roles that they are supposed to do, and KPIs are the matrices on which it will be measured.
Okay. So let us say that somebody has a job where they have to make sure that the new joiners are handed over to the departments seamlessly. So there is the onboarding that happens for all the information about the organization, basic usage of tools, and then the person is going to be moved to the next department. So the key responsibility area for this lady or gentleman would be onboarding. Okay, knowledge, imparting knowledge, onboarding, and how will you measure the KPI, key performance index? So KPIs, key performance index, will be a measure of breaking down the responsibility area into very measurable metrics. So let us say if your key responsibility area is onboarding, an example of a key performance index is TAT. So Tina joins on 1st May. Her onboarding should happen by 2nd May, provided that 1st May and 2nd May both are working days. So let us say it's a Saturday. In that case, her training can happen by Tuesday, which is a longer date. So has that been met? Yes, it has been met consistently for all batches. So she is a met or a not met. So there can be a TAT, which is a yes or a no. Then it can be in a month. In case there are new joinees, there are 100 new joinees, at least 95% of the people should have completed their induction on time. 5% can be an exception. So that again becomes an index for Tina's performance to be measured or the trainer's performance to be measured. This is how you break down your indexes, which ties to the responsibility area. Once the indexes are broken up, do you think it should be fair to give all indexes same weightage? Yes or no?
No.
It will depend on the job role that the person is
That will depend upon the job role. So let us say that somebody has a very important audit to perform. Okay. And in that audit, the chances of error is almost zero. Otherwise, there is financial implication. And then there is another area where you have to make sure that all the documents are filed and scanned and uploaded by the 10th of every month. Which one do you think will have higher weightage?
The first one was?
The first one will be critical responsibility. वो नहीं हुआ उसमें कुछ भी गलत हुआ तो आपको financial impact होगा. So what I will do when I'm designing the KPI is I will put 70% weightage on the first one. And the rest of the weightage I will break down into the other KPIs, the key performance indexes. And then you multiply the key performance index score with the weightage, you add it up, you get a performance metric. That, ladies and gentlemen, becomes your measure of success in operational terms. And this is true for trainers also. So let us say that you have 100 people that you have to train in the organization of 100 people. At the beginning of a year, your learning officer tells you that this year I have to make sure that everybody goes through these mandatory trainings. Within 3 days, the trainings are launched. So that becomes one of my index and it is critical. It is mandatory training. Second target I'm given is that nobody should be failing the cyber security test. Unko clear hi mat karo till the time they do it, no matter how many attempts it takes. So I have to design my KPIs to make sure, because it's a very serious one, I have to make sure that I take time, take effort to roll out these trainings on a regular basis, month on month, and also check how many defaulters and how can I make sure that these defaulters do not miss again and they clear the test this time because it's not an option anymore. So these are measures of success, MOS, that we all have to implement. Now, specifically in training terms, your measures of success largely come from your training outcomes. And the outcomes come when you have defined your objectives sharply. Would you agree? If the objectives are sharp, the outcomes will be sharp. The outcomes are good, it will feed forward into your measures of success of your training.
Yes.
Your measures of success doesn't already mean feedback. There used to be a time traditionally people say हो गया ना training, feedback आ गया ना 4 out of 4.7 out of 5 हो गया सब. Those days are gone. Training feedback doesn't only come from the reaction level. There are other things that also come into play. For example, training learning analytics. Did you publish the dashboard? What kind of a penetration did you have across the organization? What variety of trainings did you impart? How many was online? How many was offline? How many number of hours of mentoring were you able to cater to? How many people were you able to mentor? Who are the people you were able to provide opportunities for on-the-job training? How many field trips were supposed to be organized? How many could you actually organize? What is your percentage? So the number of analytics and the targets and the metrics have increased because training administration has become much simpler now. How do you administer all of this? All of this tracking, etc., now happens through learning management systems. You don't have to manually track them on Excel sheets anymore. And even if you do not have a learning management system in your organization, Excel sheets nowadays are co-pilot, and there are macros that you can design to make sure that your dashboards, etc., are taken care of. So that is where I would like to end today. You have 4 minutes. It's been a pretty intense class, but I wanted to cover all the aspects of the training plan. And thank you for being with me, being alert, being engaged through this. Next day, we are going to begin with the difference between blended and hybrid. We will also talk about the elements that any training plan, an effective training plan, should have. What makes a training plan super effective? That is where we will begin, and then we will build from there. Does that work for all of you?
Yes.
Great.
So I will send over this deck to all of you so that you can go through this. It's not too much material, but if you want to open your textbooks and match what we spoke about, there's a lot of material there in your textbook that you can relate. But even if you go through the slides one and just refresh what we spoke about, you should be able to follow along next time. All right. So thank you. Any questions? We have 3 minutes. Any quick questions that I can take? सब वेट कर रहे हैं कब खत्म होगा संडे शुरू करें हम लोग अपना okay in case there are no more questions thank you ladies and gentlemen thank you for your patience and your participation
you.
I'm signing off now today I hope you had some fun and you learned something along the way but well
Thank
if you didn't learn something I still do hope that you had some fun
All
all
right,
right
was a great insight.
Thank you.
thank you
Thank you.
talk to you next
Thank
week
you.
bye
Thank you, ma'am.
thank
Okay,
you
ma'am.